Use Rally to track the resolution of risks in your plan. A risk is an event or condition that can negatively impact the successful completion of your work. Let's take a look at how to administer and manage risks in Rally. There are 4 places where you may administer risks in Rally: Custom Boards, Work Views, Portfolio Items, and User Stories. You may create risks for any view or work item where you have edit permissions, and you may add them as a column in many of your list views. Risks can most easily be created and managed in Custom Boards. Roaming risks is a specific model for risk management where the team sorts risks into 4 response categories: resolved, owned, accepted, and mitigated. You can use Custom Boards in Rally to roam risks during planning and throughout the delivery cycle. From your dashboard or custom page, select the gear icon to add an app to your page. Search for the Custom Board app and add it. Configure the Custom Board app by selecting the gear icon for the board and select Settings. Let's title this Roaming Risks. We'll keep the Follow Global Project setting and then select Risk for type, Response for columns, and Rank for order. We could create swim lanes or groupings by project or teams, for example, and we could add query filters to further constrain the view, but for now we'll just keep it simple. Finally, select Save. Now you'll be able to create and see all the risks and their current status on one board. Use this information for your planning and steering meetings to review risk mitigation and resolution progress. Select the Add New button to create a new risk. Give your risk a name and select Add if you just want to enter a placeholder for your risk, or select Add with Details if you're ready to provide all the details. First, provide a description for the risk, including pertinent information about possibility, impact, and scope. Even if you don't have much data to support this risk when you start, provide any information that you know at this point. You can always update it later. You may add attachments and notes in the same way you can with other work items. Colors can be used to quickly visually locate risks in your reports to make risk work items stand out in a list. Next, you'll see the person who created or submitted the risk. Assign an owner for the risk, someone who's the current go-to person to discuss the details and impacts of the risk. If a different person becomes accountable for the risk in the future, you can change the owner at that time. Check the current state of your risk to make sure it's accurate. Usually, it's either open or closed. If you're just administering a possible risk and it hasn't been discussed yet, keep the state as none until your team or organization has decided to invest attention to research or resolve the risk. Then, change the state to open. The scheduled state for the risk will only be meaningful if you're planning work within a release or iteration time box to mitigate or resolve the risk. If your efforts to resolve the risk fall outside of planned engineering work, you won't use the scheduled state to track these efforts. If you're not associating the risk with time boxes in Rally, then just leave the risk in the default schedule state. Probability, impact, and size of loss are important for prioritizing the risk. Choose a number on the drop-down scale that best represents the relative probability and impact. Next, add a number for size of loss. This is usually a monetary cost and can be represented by a dollar amount, number of days delayed or lost, or even by a relative measurement agreed to by the organization, similar to the way we estimate story points. In this case, we're using the number of days delayed. It's important that your teams are aligned on the unit of measurement and that you apply it in the same way for all your risks. Based on the values chosen for probability, impact, and size of loss, the exposure and calculated risk are automatically calculated when you save your values. The response shows how we intend to address the risk: resolve it, own it with an expectation of action, accept it with an expectation of no action, or mitigate it. This is called roaming the risk. The response value can be identified during PI planning and may be updated as circumstances change over time. When the risk is addressed, add a short description of the manner it was handled in the resolution field. For example, automated tests were added to prevent integration defects. The resolution field is limited to 256 characters, but you can add more details in the description or the notes sections if you want to provide more information. Assign one project for the risk. Usually this is the project whose work is most impacted by the risk. If the risk impacts many projects, you may assign the risk to a project in the hierarchy that is appropriate to represent this. As we've discussed, risks can be scheduled in a release and iteration. If you will be working to mitigate or resolve the risk, you may indicate the schedule of the associated work items using these time boxes. You may also tag risks to easily locate them and report on them, just like you can with other work items. Once you save your values, you'll see that the values for exposure and calculated risk are computed. Calculated risk is a number from 1 to 25. The higher the number, the higher the risk. As we mentioned before, the exposure is the risk expressed in days lost. Algorithms in these calculations are available in the online Rally help. If the calculated risk is low, you may decide to simply accept it or monitor it. As the calculated risk rises, you may decide to plan for it or invest in mitigating or resolving it. Now that you see the exposure and calculated risk, do you want to change your response? You may add, copy, and track tasks to address the risk by selecting the task icon and administering the task information. Task estimates and to-do hours will roll up and be reported in the risk details, providing an idea of the work remaining to mitigate or resolve the risk. If a risk is raised outside of PI planning, but it's not tied to a specific portfolio item or user story, a good place to create and track it is in a work view. The Work Views page allows you to track all work, teams, and risks for a delivery context or program increment. Navigate to Plan and select Work Views. Show your filters and add risk to the work item types you want in your view. Select the Add New button and choose Risks from the Work Item Type drop-down options to create a new risk. Give your risk a name and select Create if you just want to enter a placeholder for your risk, or select Create with Details if you're ready to provide all the details. Let's now look at adding risks to a specific user story. Select the user story to see its details, then select the Risks icon at the top. Select Add New to create a new risk for this user story, or you may link it to one or more existing risks by clicking Link Existing and searching for or filtering existing risks. If you've already linked a risk to the story, that risk won't appear in the search results. Choose any risks that apply and then select Done. If you return to the risk, you'll see the user story is now tracked under Work Item Affected. Follow the same procedure to attach a risk to a portfolio item. Risks may be associated with multiple user stories and portfolio items, and a user or portfolio item may be associated with multiple risks. Now we'll review adding risks to your views. You may add risks as a column for your list or board views. For example, in your portfolio items, user stories, or work views, select Show Fields and then select Risks to show the number of risks associated with the work item. In board views, such as the Portfolio Kanban or Team Board, risks can be added as a field to show on the cards. To see the risk details, click the number in the risk column to open up the detail window. From here, you can expand risks to see even more details, or select the Edit button to go to the Risk Details page for the work item.